I would say over the past few months, the way I work has completely changed. I'm pretty much working exclusively out of Cursor on a day-to-day basis because it's just got so many connected tools to it, so much power, and abilities to work across different platforms.
What if you could take any idea you had and turn it into a working prototype in a matter of minutes? In this, the first ever episode of Thinking Straight, you'll learn how to take ideas from concept to reality using Cursor, a development environment that's quickly becoming a central hub, not just for software engineers, but for modern knowledge workers of all types. I'm joined by Ian Goldberg, Senior Technical Product Manager at OneVision, a longtime friend and colleague of mine, and one of the most forward-thinking people I know when it comes to applying AI to achieve massive productivity gains and real business results. Join us live and unscripted as we take an idea from conception to prototype in a matter of minutes using simple off-the-shelf tools with zero coding required. We cover simple strategies for expanding your AI horizons beyond just chat, why Cursor is not just a tool for developers and how to set it up for your workflow, and how feeding AI context unlocks exponential gains that you can't get any other way. Let's dive in. I'm excited to be here with you, man. I couldn't think of a better first guest for the podcast. You and I have worked together for many years, and really, seeing your growth, frankly, over that whole kind of period of time, but especially over the last few years since AI has come out, and then even more specifically over the last several months as we've really leaned in with Opus and things like that I'm sure we'll get into. It's been pretty incredible. So we're going to get in, and we're going to do some live vibe coding today. So we're not really scripted. We've got a general idea of how we're going to approach this, but anyone watching or listening later is going to hear us really working through things in real time. But before we do that, I'd love if you could maybe just set the stage a little bit and talk about your process for learning AI. You're one of the sharpest people I know in the space. You're constantly teaching me new things, and I follow this stuff pretty closely. And I'm curious if you can just talk to your process for finding new ideas and information and really implementing them into your workflow.
Yeah. So I think funny enough, we're on a podcast right now, and my main way of learning and my process of learning is going out into nature, and I listen to podcasts and I do learning and through others, and I come back home and I take ideas that I've had when I'm on the trail and I put them into practice, and it's really about doing things myself and experimenting and failing and running into roadblocks and then using AI tools to learn more and really level up my game. And I've kind of run into some blockers in that way of things over the last few months because a lot of the podcasts now are on YouTube, and I found that some of these podcasts you actually learn so much more when you're actually watching the video. As I'm sure any listener on this one will see, we're going to be doing some screen sharing today, and it's really cool to be able to watch people's process using all these new tools. But I'd say I'm just constantly hungry to learn more and more about technology. I've been a technologist my entire life, I'd say. Started building computers when I was 10 years old, and I was never a traditional programmer or engineer, but over the years I've taught myself a lot where I'd say I'm pretty dangerous these days.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Yeah. It is a very visual medium. I agree. I think anyone listening to this audio only will get a lot out of it. But if you're able to watch people actually do things, that's definitely one of the best ways. And I think to me, the biggest thing there is what you said, putting it into practice and just getting in and doing it. I talk to a lot of people who are very curious about AI, but they'll admit that they're barely scratching the surface. And I always say, you just got to pick a project and jump in and start. And then I always also say that one of my favorite use cases for AI is learning it to use about AI, right? If you get stuck, the beautiful thing about it is you can just ask the AI for help and it'll shepherd you right along. And I think people are going to see that today. So let's jump in. You and I are going to do, like I said at the beginning, some live vibe coding. You're our technical product manager at OneVision. There's a big part of what you do is take things from, hey, somebody has an idea, to let's get an initial design put together, and then let's go obviously get it into production. And that timeline in which we're able to do that today has just shrunk dramatically with AI. And so I look forward to jumping into that process. So talk to me about how the process initially begins. Where do we start?
Well, really, we start wherever the idea begins. We have a lot of different mediums that request might come through. Maybe you have a Slack thread where some people in a company are talking about a feature or functionality or a bug that they're seeing, or you're on a live meeting with somebody, or I might just be out on the trail again and I just have like this brain thing that pops up, and I have this aha moment. It's like, oh my god, we could solve X problem by Y. So you start with wherever the problem lives. It doesn't matter where that is, and even if it's something that is in your brain, I would recommend translating it to text first. So there's a few tools that I've used for this in my process. I am religiously using Granola. Anytime I'm on a call, I have got Granola running and it's got live transcription. So I can go back to that transcript and grab any information that I'd like. Other tools I've used are like Loom for recording a quick video, and then I can take the transcript from there. Or there are some cool modern tools. I use Monologue from Every, and that's a really cool thing. You can just start a transcription of anything that you want, and you start with voice, and it translates it all to cleaned up text, and that's where we start.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really, it sounds simplistic almost if you haven't been in this world doing it, but the key thing I think to understand there is that AI, like by definition, is exceptionally good at working with just text, like unstructured data. And so all of a sudden, your ability to just verbally riff on an idea or to bring in a few key stakeholders in a company and have a meeting to discuss an idea and run a transcription like Granola, which I also use heavily and love. And then now you've got this transcript that you can just feed to an AI, and you don't have to do any massaging of the transcript. You just give it to AI in its raw form and use it as a conversation starter, essentially, to say, hey, here's what I want to build. Here's a transcript about it. Let's start riffing on it. So I'd love to show that in practice. I think you had it set up where on today's session, we were actually going to jump in, show some of this live transcription, and then how you take that transcript and use it as a jumping off point for the development of a new feature, product, or service.
Yeah, definitely. Let me set up my screen real quick. All right, so right now I've actually got Granola open, and I thought it would be cool if like you and I just riffed on an idea together of just something fun and cool that we could build together. I'm not sure if you have anything rattling around in your brain. I had like I kind of like went to the space of a game, but we could also go to a productivity tool or something like that. What do you think?
I think we should jump into some sort of productivity tool. I think a game could be fun, but like most people listening, probably knowledge workers, looking for ways to increase their efficiency. So maybe some sort of, um, productivity tool that allows you to take like a live transcript from a call and maybe generate some to-dos or follow-up emails or something like that. That could be one idea.
Okay. Well, I think with that we like might not even need to have even real code in this workflow. I think that we could use a tool like Granola and Cursor, and we could use some sort of third-party tool like even Notion, and kind of like generate some task or for people, or even like generate meeting notes that we could distribute to a larger audience based off of what we're trying to do or what the meeting is about. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. So basically, I think if we're having a live meeting, we're generating a transcript, and through that we have a whole bunch of to-dos that might come out of it. and we want to disperse these to-dos across the company. We probably want to assign them and have a status, maybe display it in a Kanban board. It kind of seems like Notion is a perfect place for this. So I don't know. I think it would be really cool if we could just take a transcript, paste it into somewhere, and then automatically it like goes to Notion and creates the whole workflow and creates all the tasks for you right on your behalf and auto assigns them to people.
I think it's a great idea. Yeah, I mean, tons of people out there, I'm sure, using Notion and tools like it. This would port over very easily to like a Monday.com or ClickUp or any of those other common tools. So, yeah, I like the idea of not always building something completely custom, but using AI and like what we're going to show here to essentially illustrate how easy it is to leverage the power of AI to build tools and workflows that layer on top of your existing tools that you might already be using in your company.
Yeah, and then I think like even after that, once you kind of have the prototype of what you're wanting to actually build, that makes it easier to understand requirements and take those requirements and build an actual product for yourself. Really using some sort of like tool such as a Notion or a Monday, etc., could allow you to really understand what you want to build first, and then you can go from there and actually build some real SaaS. So, are there any other maybe requirements that you'd want to throw into here?
So I think if it simply records or gets a transcript, I should say, of the meeting, and then maybe presents like to-dos for human review and allows me to maybe quickly edit and then push a button before they get sent over into Notion. That would be pretty cool because sometimes AI doesn't get everything 100% right. So it'd be cool if it just presented like a list of to-dos and allowed me just to edit the name of the to-do, maybe refine it, massage it, and then click a button before everything goes over to Notion automatically.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. So you might notice here that like I've got Granola up, but I'm not even right now utilizing the full functionality of Granola. Like I'm not writing any sort of notes. I'm only basically using the transcript. So I'm going to open up the transcript just to show you what this looks like. This is everything that we've been talking about. It's been running in real time, as you can see. But it's got this Ask Anything feature. And, what I can type and ask it is like, we are talking about scoping out a productivity tool for task generation using Notion. Provide me with all of the requirements. So I just sent that all off to Granola, and it gave me back a little bit of stuff, but let's say get more detailed, because it didn't really give me that much information back. So here it says input and scope. It gives a to-do extraction, human layer review, Notion integration, assignment logic, and then like a transcript Notion flow, and then it has some usability requirements and extensibility and feature. Let's go with
Love
that.
it.
I don't think
Yeah.
we need to add anything else to that. It looks great.
No, I think
So
it's a great starting point. And I think anyone watching this or listening, like, just take a moment to recognize like how just quick and simple that is. And like this could map over whether you're building software like Ian and I are about to do, or maybe you're a company leader and you're having a meeting with your team about some new policy that you're rolling out in the business, or you run a service company and you want to change something about how you deliver service to your customers. These concepts map very cleanly over to all of that. So simply having this tool running, which by the way has a free tier, and the ability just to very quickly have a conversation and then have it spit out in a very structured outline like this is insanely powerful. And I'm with you. Granola has really become like one of the absolute bedrocks of my productivity stack because it's just so frictionless and useful for so many different things.
yeah, absolutely. Even if you're not on a meeting, you can go to the home and you can the homepage, and you can just go ahead and do a quick note, and you can start saying whatever you want and use that transcription.
Yep.
So now I'm going to, sorry about that, I'm going to jump over to Cursor. I've got a very blank cursor screen right here. I usually start with Command-Shift-P, new chat, and we can open up a new chat. You can see here you've got model selection. I would suggest anyone play around with these models. Opus 4.5 is really, really powerful, but it's pretty overkill for a lot of tasks. So I think we could start with some sort of like simpler writing type of model. You might want to choose like Composer 1, which is Cursor's model, or you can use Sonnet 4.5. I'm going to move over to Sonnet 4.5. It's by Anthropic. It's one of Claude's models, and I'm just gonna like paste in that area of Granola's scope that I put in. I'll put a couple of lines at the top, and then we can talk about like what we want to do. So before we jump into that, I'd like to talk about some concepts inside of Cursor. I did Command-Shift-P, that's where I start everything, and you can type whatever you want. I'll go to Cursor Settings. From Cursor Settings, there are a few different things that you might want to set up as a user. If I go down to Indexing and Docs, you can see that you can, if you're linked up with your code base, you can of course have your whole code base indexed so that Cursor knows more about your code base. But also there's this area that's called Docs where you can crawl docs. And it can kind of index all the developer docs for a tool that you might want to use. So for example, I build a lot of retool workflows. I've got retool indexed in here, but you can see that I also have Notion's API. I simply just clicked add doc. I went to Notion API, I grabbed their API docs, I dropped it in here, and just wanted to make sure that I've got the most knowledge that I can have about Notion's API so that these models can take them into practice and usage when they're helping me build.
Yeah. And something I want to jump in here with is Cursor is fundamentally it's an IDE, an integrated development environment. So it's a tool built first and foremost for software developers. But something really interesting I think that's happening with Cursor is that it's becoming this sort of hub where you don't have to be a software developer to get utility out of it. And that's not just because AI can now write the code for you, but because actually like Cursor can just do things that are useful for lots of different roles. So lots of product managers are starting to use Cursor, even if they're not pushing code or writing code. They might be using it for prototypes and things like that. But you can also use it for research, creating documentation, all sorts of things. And so like, don't get too stuck on thinking of Cursor as just a tool for software developers. Ultimately, Cursor has integrations built with a bunch of different large language model providers. So you can, in a very loose sense, think of it as like a chat GPT where you're coming in, but you can select different models to chat with, like you just said a minute ago, right? And then it's got all these different tools that you can hook up. You can give it access to documentation and a bunch of other things. And so it can be a lot to look at, particularly if you're not like an engineer at first, but understand that like there's only really a few fundamental concepts that you really need to master in order to come in here and actually get a tremendous amount of use out of Cursor.
Yeah, absolutely. Before Cursor, I was not working out of an IDE every single day. But in a product role, I would say over the past few months, my role and the way I work has completely changed. I'm pretty much working not exclusively, but almost exclusively out of Cursor on a day-to-day basis because it's just got so many connected tools to it, so much power, and abilities to work across different platforms. So, and what do I mean by that? There's this other area called tools and MCPs. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. And basically, you can think of it as like an API layer between a model and a third-party tool, such as something like Linear or Figma, or in this case, Notion. Every single MCP server that you can connect to has a number of tools. So for example, with Notion, I can do Notion search or create a page or update a page or create a database, update a database. And these are tools that you're giving your agents access to so they can be more powerful. Each one has a specification that you can provide as well. And this is basically a markdown file of how the model can work with this specific MCP. And it just gives it context so it can be more powerful in your environment.
Yeah, at its core, MCP, which by the way is an amazing technology. I'm like blown away by it routinely as I've started to get more into it over the last couple of months. At its core, what it really allows you to do is use natural language, like just like you're talking with a, any large language model. And then it kind of abstracts away a lot of the complexity of like doing API calls and things like that. So instead of having to structure different API calls for Notion create entry, Notion fetch database, whatever all those different functions might be, you can simply tell the MCP, hey, go retrieve me these records from this database. And it's going to essentially translate that natural language into all of the technical things that need to happen under the hood and just give you back what you want. So really, really powerful technology and super cool to play around with.
Yep. And before we get started, there's one more area that I'd like to talk through, which is rules, skills, and agents. Rules, skills, and agents is an area where you can actually define like how the model and how the agents will work within your environment. So you can give it instructions like, never push code to a repository or never take actions on my behalf without confirming first. And how you might work with code, things of that nature. One of the ones that I started with was a simple rule that is just about who I am. So as I talk to it, it can kind of know who I am. So I basically said, Ian Goldberg, user context. I'm a senior technical product manager at OneVision. I lead an engineering team and handle all design for ProVision, which is our tool. And it's a next generation contact center for the smart home industry. I told it like my technical level, I'm not a developer, but I'm fairly technical. I use Cursor for pull requests, small features, and I only build based off of existing code examples from developers on our team. Don't ever suggest patterns, abstractions, or approaches I haven't seen in my code base. And it's because, really, I'm not an engineer. I want to make sure that when I'm pushing stuff, that the developers agree with the approach. It's stuff we've seen before, so I can more easily get my code pushed. I also gave it some communication styles and some information about the tools that we use via MCP. And then I gave it some information that this should be a living document, that, Cursor should really have some autonomy to continue to update this document as I interact with it and provide it more context about who I am, so that over time it kind of builds this context layer of who Ian is and how he works, and can use that to ultimately produce better results.
Absolutely. So if we zoom out here for just a second, what's really fundamentally the same about all these different things that we're showing, maybe MCPs aside, but the transcript that we did, the prompt that we used Granola to generate, the rules that you're showing here, it's all about giving the AI context, right? And AI is only as good as the information that you feed it. These systems are like remarkably intelligent at general sort of intelligence, but they don't know anything about you as a person necessarily, or your specific business or the feature that you're trying to build. And so creating this scaffolding that you have in place, or these workflows like you have with Granola, are really, I think, one of the biggest unlocks to AI, that once people start to understand that context layer that you talked about, that's when you really start to level up and get just so much more power out of AI.
Yep, 100%. There's also this idea of skills, and skills can allow you to execute something on a repeated basis, and you can call a skill. So for example, I've got a skill called linear issue, and it helps me create linear issues with specific styles. It gives me like a title format that I put in there, some examples, the body structure, etc. So in our example with creating some sort of Notion database and tasks that we put in there, we might actually just want to start out by instructing Cursor to create a skill for us. So over here on the right side where I opened up that chat, I think what we can do is we can actually say, based on the below transcript, let's create a Cursor skill, which can process transcripts pasted into Cursor and go to Notion and create pages within an existing database. First,
This is amazing, by the way, while you're typing this out, because as people are looking at all these different rules and skills that you've created, it can seem like daunting to have to go create all of that. But again, there's this really positive, like recursive loop that happens with using AI, where you can use AI to generate the skills. You can, for example, the rule that you put in about I'm Ian, here's who I am, here's what I do. Like you might not know how to format that, right? Or make that optimal. So just go to your favorite AI tool, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, doesn't matter, and just tell it, hey, I want to create a rule for Cursor that accomplishes the following. Ask me a few questions, help me think about what to put in there and format it, and just have a discussion with AI. And within 5 or 10 minutes, you'll have a really robust, nicely formatted little chunk of markdown that you can just paste into Cursor. So like using AI to create context is also a really fundamental unlock that I think people miss sometimes.
yeah, definitely. So in here, I just said like, based on the below transcript, let's create a Cursor skill which can process transcript pasted into Cursor and go to Notion, create the pages within an existing database. First, we will want to create that database, then store the database ID in the skill so we can reuse the database and just create pages in it. So, this is not a very heavy prompt. I'm just going to go ahead and press enter. And what I'm hoping it will do is, okay, so it's reading
We're about to find out, right?
listing my tools.
Yeah, you can see it working its magic. And it's worth noting that prompt there that you put in does have some knowledge already baked into it that you have about how Notion works, right? Like enough to say, hey, create this database, do the following things. And that's great if you have it, but it's also not entirely necessary, right? Like if you're working with a tool and you're just learning it, you fed it the documentation and it can also go figure those things out. So what's really cool about these kinds of workflows with AI is that AI is exceptionally good at meeting you where you're at. So if you're super technical and you can jump in and give it a head start by giving it more direction and guidance about the architecture and how you want things to work, great. If not, if you're just kind of getting started, you can also be a lot more general, and the AI is still going to lead you down the path and help you figure it out.
Yep, 100%. One thing I'll point out while we let this thing run is that another tool that I mentioned earlier, which I've been integrating more and more in my workflow, is a tool from Every that's called Monologue. And you can see that I've got this little speaker over here on the right. And what this allows me to do at any point is to not touch my keyboard if I don't feel like I have to. So for example, I touch my keyboard to enable Monologue, but what I can do is just hold down my control key and it enables this. And you'll just want to turn it on for the first time. And what it's doing right now is doing a live transcription that is going to be in my keyboard. So one thing that I forgot to tell this system is that it's going to actually use the MCP from Notion in order to be able to create the database first. And then it should take that database ID and put it in the Cursor skill. Once we have the database ID in the Cursor skill, then we will teach the skill how to actually create the pages within the database. So I'm just going to send this off to Cursor and we should be good. So I will let go of this, and it's, of course, I'm not signed in.
Live demos.
Live demo. So
the Monologue tool, does that, I've heard of it before, I haven't used it yet. Does it just automatically copy it to your clipboard? When you finish?
Automatically copies it to your clipboard, and it automatically pastes it into wherever you have selected, and it also will clean up the text. So if you say ums and ahs and things of that nature, it can automatically clean up the text. The last thing that I can do is you can give instructions to Monologue based off of the tool that you're using. So if you want it to clean up the text in a specific way or format it in a certain way, if you're pasting it into Cursor, you can have it clean up the text that way. And it could be different than if you paste into Slack. So if you want it to work inside of Slack, you can use Monologue and kind of have the underlying prompt that says, make this into like a well-formatted Slack message, which is obviously something that would be different than if you were pasting it into an
really
AI
cool.
tool like Cursor.
That's really cool. So it sounds similar to, there's like Whisper Flow, there's Willow, I think is another one. So it's solving a similar problem. It sounds like it's doing it in some cool, sort of elegant ways that maybe some of those other tools aren't. So I should definitely check it out. But I will say that I'm a big Whisperflow user, and you sometimes you think of like old school dictation apps, back in the day, like people used to try to do this where you didn't have to type and you could speak, and it was horrible. The technology just wasn't there yet. We're in a different world now. So these voice dictation types of apps that allow you just to speak and then it'll do the typing for you are amazing. I use them all the time. It's so much faster than typing, and highly recommend if you're not using one of those to look into that. All
Yep.
right, so talk us through what we're seeing here.
So I gave it the instructions that it should be using the MCP. So now I want to go ahead and create that database inside of Notion, so we can now put that inside of the skill, the ID of the database, so that it knows that we'll use the database every single time. So you can see right here, I prompted it to do so. Cursor is saying that it's going to create the Notion database using the MCP. If I expand out any of these, you can see that it went ahead and created this database like so. And from there, you can see that the database was created. It's got some field. It's called meeting tasks. It's got fields like task name, description, owner, status, priority, with some enums in there. And we should really be ready to go and use this tool that we created.
By the way, let's take half a step back. So the Notion MCP, if you're setting this up for the first time, you're obviously already like authenticated, but talk to somebody who maybe has never set up an MCP before, and just at a high level, what are you doing? What is the process for getting that MCP set up? Because you're having this discussion with AI right now, and you're basically saying, hey, go use the MCP to create the database. Obviously, you've got the sign in and things like that already taken care of in Cursor. So talk about how you find these MCPs, and at a high level, how do you get them configured?
Absolutely. So Cursor, they have an MCP directory, but you could also probably just ask Cursor to go ahead and create the MCP. But I won't do that for now. I'll just go to the MCP directory. I'll type in Notion, and there's a button that says Add to Cursor. You click Add to Cursor, it will open up your Cursor window, and then from there, it will give you some like install option, and then once you install it, it will have you authenticate or connect to it. So basically just have you log into that system.
Yep. And again, back to that idea I talked about earlier. If you get stuck, just ask AI, Cursor, open up one of the little chats or agents inside of Cursor and ask. But that's important. So now people know, okay, like Ian's got all these tools set up. You've gone through and just done that for each one of these. It takes literally 2 minutes to get them set up. You can go look in Cursor's MCP directory. You can ask AI. You can Google it. These MCP servers are out there and everywhere. So, okay, so that's set up. And then with that, you now have the ability, like we talked about earlier, to just using natural language with an AI, say, hey, go create the database. And then, by the way, I also want to zoom out just a little bit on the idea of this skill that you're creating. So basically what we're doing here is, it sounds like we're not actually, and you mentioned this earlier, but I just want to kind of underline it. We're not actually like building a new application necessarily to take the transcript and create the to-dos in Notion. We're going to use Cursor for that. And basically you just have to take the transcript out of whatever app you might be using, like Granola. And once you have this skill built in Cursor, you can just come into to Cursor, paste the transcript, and then it'll go use the MCP and get all of the to-dos and so forth created.
Yeah,
That's the
100%.
basic architecture. Okay.
Now that the skill is created from Notion or from Cursor, I can go ahead and click on one of these files that shows all the changes, and this will give you the basic idea of what everything is happening.
So sorry, the config.md, what is that file doing?
So it's the configuration of the actual skill itself.
Okay.
But then I've got the skill MD that's going to tell it kind of like what the skill should actually do. So the config is just like saying, hey, this is the database ID. There's some duplicate information in here. So we could probably clean it up, but I don't really think it's necessary. It's probably going to work as is.
So again, it's basically the file that we're looking at here is the skill. And this is essentially a set of operating instructions. And the config.md is under the hood giving some additional technical details like database ID, etc.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. So you can see that it provides like the database ID. It says like listen for specific task, like I'll send, we'll need to, can you, let's, action items, so that when I send over the transcript, it's actually going to be able to have better like intent detection. So for each of these tasks, it's going to extract like a title, description, owner, priority, due date, context. It's going to build the name mapping so it can map over to the Notion user ID, so that if you have users inside of Notion, there's a MCP tool that I can use called Notion get users. By the way, I didn't prompt it to do this. It just did this automatically. And from there, it's going to create the task and everything like that.
Amazing.
So
yeah, and that's such an important point to just expand out even is like, you look at all of this rich detail and this really thoughtful like requirements document that it's basically put together saying, hey, here's exactly how this needs to get executed. So when Ian later comes in and puts a transcript in, this is precisely what needs to happen. And you just think about like, not that long ago, as a product person, you would have had to sit there and painstakingly think through all of those edge cases and spell that all out manually. In this new world that we're living in, you are basically able to feed it a transcript, give it additional sort of guidance, and then it's taking care of all of these details for you, which is amazing.
yeah, and really, like this gets us to a version 1 very, very quickly. As you know, like we love iterative development, so it's hard to like come up with an initial scope that is meaningful for users, but covers most things, that doesn't go overboard. But this allows you to have at least a starting place. And afterwards, like you can add additional prompting to add additional functionality and features to this skill so it can do more and more. But this should like get us 90% of the way there out of the box. And then from there, we can continue to make it better over time as we find additional use cases.
Love it. Love it. All right. So what's next?
So I'd say the next thing that we can do is we can go ahead and just naturally riff on some tasks that we want to complete and put in our database and just see how it does. So, Jason, I think like in prepping for this, we could give each other some tasks. Maybe I'll give you a task that you want to go ahead and review this skill afterwards and find the intents that it put in there and try to make those intents better.
Yeah, I think so basically right now we just want to capture like a transcript of some mock to-dos to
Exactly.
okay. So Jason, so I will take a to-do from this meeting to like review the skill and make sure that there's nothing that I would want to add. And then I need you to take a to-do from this meeting to make sure that the rest of the team is now aware that we've added this capability to Cursor so that they can start leveraging it in their own workflows, so that basically everybody who has their meetings transcribed can start using it to get all of their to-dos into our new Notion database. And then the other thing that maybe you can do and take a to-do from this meeting would be to just set a reminder for like a week from now to check and make sure that things are going into the database appropriately and that it's actually being adopted by the team.
Yeah, perfect. And the last task I think I'll give myself is we talked about eventually putting this into like an actual product and productizing it. So I think I'd like to take a task for myself to go ahead and put together a mock-up design for this as well.
Love it. All right, so cool. Just to recap there, we're just that was a little bit forced, right? Because we're just trying to demonstrate this, but in a typical use case of what we're building here, that discussion would just be happening organically. So you're meeting with your developer or you're meeting with your team, you're talking about an initiative, and embedded inside of the transcript of that discussion is going to be a bunch of to-dos and tasks. And the idea here is that we're just going to take the one snippet and kind of manually paste it over to demonstrate what's happening. But more often what this would be doing is extracting those to-dos out of an entire like hour-long meeting transcript.
Yep, 100%. So I went ahead and grabbed from the transcript the areas that we just riffed on the next steps, and I'm just going to go ahead and open up a new cursor chat. Actually, I'm going to keep all so we keep that skill, and I did Command-Shift-P, new chat. And I'm going to just say, here is a transcript, paste in the transcript, put a double line in there so I have a break, and I'll say, use the Notion meeting task skill to create tasks from this transcript.
And so you can imagine like this is one use case where we're saying, okay, you've built this skill in Cursor and now you're having meetings and you can quickly just grab a transcript from the meeting, come in here, paste it in, fire off a quick command, and have it take care of the rest. Like, but this is just one example. So you could have other things like maybe tying it in with your calendar to schedule meetings, sending Slack messages, sending emails, all sorts of concepts here, but the basic design principles would be the same.
Yep, 100%. So you can see here that it got all 4 tasks from that transcript pretty easily. And one of the things that we said in the skill is that we want to confirm next steps. So it said next steps, confirm which JSON should own 1 through 3, confirm task 4 or task 4 owner, and edit any task details. So I think like we will give the first 2 to you and then the last 2 to me. So first to Jason, last to me, go for it. So I sent that off, and what it's likely going to do is go to Notion. You can see that it's running this MCP. It will say skip or run, but I just sometimes if I want to run faster, I just press run, and you can see that it's going off and it's creating Notion pages. So now it's created 4 Notion pages. We haven't even looked at this database yet, and we can see what it did. So I'll click on one of these, open it up. Let's see. And if I go back to meeting task, you can see that we've got all these meeting tasks. If we want to, we can change the layouts over to like a Kanban board, and we can see that we've got to-dos. We can move these around, put these to-dos in the right order. And you can see that like the owner of this one's Jason. We've got Jason, and we've got Ian. So I guess notify about meeting transcripts or about new transcript capability is assigned to Jason, but maybe we can update the skill so it's better at that.
Yeah, so there's always some refinement that has to happen, right? These things they're getting amazingly good, and they'll do things on the first try more often than you would expect. But yeah, as you get into this stuff, you should always expect to do some refinement. But man, this is so cool because now you can think about how if you were going to keep going down this path, right, of this thing that we're developing, you could very easily go in and start to modify the skill for follow-up meetings. So maybe you have a project that's ongoing and you're meeting with your team every week and you're feeding the transcripts of those ongoing meetings into a cursor chat, and it's basically able to go and like if somebody said in the next week's meeting that something was done, it can just from the transcript figure out, oh, this task was done. Do you want me to mark it as complete for you? So it now becomes almost this like administrative assistant that can like manage this ongoing project database using just natural language and transcript. And all you've got to do is get the transcript in there and then maybe answer a few questions to clarify things.
Yeah. And then, the last thing I'll show you is, if I've got the meeting task database now. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new chat. And I say something like, I've got a meeting task database in Notion, use the MCP, understand what we want to do for the design mockup task, and initiate a design plan. So what I'm hoping that we are going to do here is go to that Notion database that we created, and we can more or less grab the task that we had, and we can actually understand what it is. And I have a cursor skill that can generate a design document that we could then feed into another tool such as like Figma Make or V0 from
Amazing.
Vercel, and be able to come up with like a high fidelity
Yeah.
design,
Yeah.
and also a kind of like a plan of what we want to build.
That's awesome. So while this is doing this, I had like another idea just to keep riffing on like possibilities, right? We could sit here all day and keep going, but like ideas maybe for future discussions would be like, imagine sitting down on a Monday morning and using this tool to go look at your project database and say, hey, any tasks that are still open, look at the task, who's responsible, and draft a 2 to 3 sentence Slack message to that person asking them for the latest. And it could go through that entire database. And if there was 20 open tasks, like you're managing a big team, big project or something, and it'll just quickly draft, and then maybe you could review, copy and paste them into Slack, or even better, go find a Slack MCP that could send them for you. So like the possibilities are just, you start with something simple. This is what I tell people all the time when they're like looking to get started. I'm like, start with a real problem that you're dealing with, something that just gives you that pain point on a consistent basis, and go just start a discussion with AI about how to solve it. Build something really simple, and then just start layering on. And you'll be amazed at like how far you can get by doing that.
Yeah, 100%. You can see that I now have this like design document that talks about different phases and layouts and actions and interactions, things of that nature, maybe like sections. And what you can basically do is you can take this into your favorite AI-driven design tool, paste it in there and say, go through this design requirements document or plan and come up with a prototype. And very quickly, within probably 5 or 10 minutes, you can get a clickable prototype that you can at least use to go start having conversations with internal stakeholders.
Amazing. Well, unfortunately, we're running tight on time here, so I think we're going to have to maybe table that one for a future episode. I definitely want to get in and see more about your design flow, and I'd love to have you on as a, maybe a recurring guest on the show, because I meant what I said at the beginning. A lot of what you're doing with AI is so inspirational, and it's really pushing me to like, sometimes I feel like, oh my gosh, I got to keep up, which is really cool. So I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing some of what you're doing. I guess in closing, like, if you had one or maybe two pieces of advice to somebody out there who is either not doing the AI thing at all, or maybe like they're just scratching the surface, but they're feeling a little stuck or daunted by how to really become more of that like next level power user, what piece of advice would you give them?
My number one piece of advice is just be curious. Dive in, start trying stuff out, have conversations with the AI, and just start learning what it can do. Obviously, I had a lot of trust today and giving it autonomy to go create data and manipulate data and things of that nature. But you don't have to start there. If you want to dip your toes in the water, you can connect information from your company and just start asking questions about your company and its data to better understand what the tool has access to, and just continue tinkering around until you become more comfortable with the system.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Ian, this was great. If anyone wants to get a hold of you, ask a follow-up question, just connect, what would be the best way for them to do that?
You can find me on Twitter at ibgoldbergs.com or ibgoldberg, sorry. Or yeah, that's probably the best way.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, I'll let you go. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too, Jason.